just do it, it'll turn out okay. And today we have a new guest on the channel.
Hi. I am Dominic Peary. I am like Doc, I am a paleontologist in training. And I am here because I have two of these animals in today's video stream. I'm not used to doing this. I have either worked on or have been in very close contact with. So, hi.
Yes.
And of course, you all know Doc Dino, the true one, not the fake one.
Yeah, hello out there, folks. Hope y'all are doing well. For the first time in forever, we actually have two of these streams 2 weeks in a row. The first time in a while. Wow.
And for the first time in a while, we're not going to talk about dinosaurs.
That's correct. Let's see. Should we give people another couple minutes to trickle in, or do you think we should get started?
I don't know. Unless you want to talk about something you're doing in the field or whatever while we wait for people.
Is there anything to talk about in the field?
Yeah, there's not a lot I can talk about in the field.
Yeah, let's say.
I guess I will say, at least, hello to my audience. I am trying to become more active on my YouTube channel, trying to put more time into it. It does take a lot of time, though. I spent hours working on this presentation today and yesterday. I put a tentative super chat goal in the chat. If you'd like to help support the channel and support me being able to take the time to do all this stuff, then please consider leaving something.
Same with my channel, but I don't have super goals. I only have the Venmo link in my description up there, so you can help support either of our channels.
Yes, same for Vendalia's Venmo. But what was I going to say? If we reach a certain goal, then we will we'll let you guys who are watching tonight decide what we do next time. Though be warned, it will be a couple weeks because Vendalia is busy next week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, then again, you guys have been deciding all along, really, with these polls we've been doing.
That's true, but this gives a chance for the live audience to choose what we do next. So if you send in a super chat, you can help have a really big hand in deciding what group we cover next, because all of the remaining groups of dinosaurs are pretty interesting. So
I will just complete his donation goal to force him to talk about only Masiacosaurus. That's the entire video. It's just Masiacosaurus or Mashikosaurus.
$25, I'll do it.
Just Noasaurus in general. That would be a great one.
So now we have 9 people watching right now.
It's probably good enough to start.
All right, so where are these sea creatures? Where do they branch off from the way out before the dinosaurs? Where they branch off at?
That's an excellent question.
Yes, that is a really good question, and one that's an area of active research for at least some of the groups here. Some of them are a complete mystery, other than reptile.
There is, I think there's only really, well, in the major 3 groups of marine reptiles, there are others, but major 3, only one of them we really know where it comes from. The other 2, one of them is literally and we'll get to the other one when we get to the weirdos.
Yeah, I know the one is snugly within the lizard group.
Yes. Yes, snugly in monitor lizards specifically.
Well, between monitor lizards and snakes still, I think, but closer to monitor lizards.
We know where it comes from.
The other 2 we know are diapsids, at least, I think.
Yeah, which
before that
probably
fun with phylogeny. But at any rate, a good way to segue to introduce the topic of the stream. As Vendalia already said, we are not doing dinosaurs this time. We are going to be looking at other reptiles, specifically the marine reptiles of the Mesozoic.
Cue
again,
the
that's
cue
the
fastest thing under the sea.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, that or as the paleo community has adopted the song Ocean Man to describe all of
That's
these.
true. All of them, especially the predatory ones.
Yes.
Were some of these not predatory ones?
Um,
We have
actually,
a
yeah,
couple weirdos in
early
here, but
ones.
most of them are predators.
some of them are weird predators though. We'll get to those ones later.
That's true.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at 3 main groups, though there will be others: the
Mhm.
ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and a secret category that we'll talk about later.
The secret category, the most well-known one. Yeah. Um,
Maybe. But
All
before
right, but first of all, these all start off. All three of them start off as tetrapods on the land.
yes, all three
Yes.
of them are reptiles. We know that at least.
Yep. So everything you see in this presentation evolved from a land living ancestor, unless it's a
prob-
fish that sneaks in or these ammonites.
Yeah, that all of them, and knowing how these work, even if we don't know what these things really evolved from, giant reptiles tend to evolve from something that looked like a lizard. That's just kind of what they all do.
Yeah, a
So,
long, low body.
yeah.
Also, as always with these streams, if you'd like to follow along or want to read this later, or just take a better look at the artist credits, the link to the presentation is in both mine and Vendalia's descriptions. And with that, I think we'll get started. But we're not going to go below the waves just yet. We're gonna get a little background here because we're starting all the way from the Triassic, so the first period in the age of dinosaurs. So before the Mesozoic, so even though we think of the Mesozoic as the age of dinosaurs, they weren't alone. Pterosaurs conquered the skies, and many other reptiles took to the water. But before all this could take place, something had to clear the way. What allowed these animals, who had previously been bit players in the game of life, to conquer the world? Well, the world before the dinosaurs would have been pretty alien to us. The apex predators on land were saber-toothed bear hyenas. That's basic. That's a good way to think of them.
Yeah, you're not
But
wrong.
I believe these bear hyenas were more related to us. They were dinosaurs. They were our relatives.
That's true.
They were stem mammals. Yes.
Or
Yep.
as synapsids, as people call them. Now,
Yeah.
So even though people think of mammals as living in the shadows of dinosaurs, technically our ancestors held the limelight first, then dinosaurs, then us again.
Yeah, we took it back. We took it back eventually.
And compared to those weird apex predators, the largest herbivores were kind of like a mix of giant hairless wombats and these giant land turtles, which I think are still closest related to turtles.
Yeah.
That's an excellent question. We have like 3 of them.
Of course, I just gotta say one thing. Even though we've been at this war between us and the diapsids, we had to team up against the protostones because they're kicking our butt.
Yeah, I guess so.
You're also forgetting the living beer kegs that dominated the rivers and streams.
Listen, I can't include every weird thing from the Permian.
And that's why I'm here, to give you very bad descriptions of these creatures.
I mean, the funny thing is, it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
So is this picture from the Permian or this picture from the Carboniferous?
It's
Permian.
This is Permian, yeah. There. Oh yeah. No one really knows this. There were giant locusts and like the kings of the skies during the Permian were giant locusts and dragonfly things. They were awful.
Yeah, cool. I did not know the big insects survived after the Carboniferous.
Yes. Some of them thrived. Yeah.
It took a lot to severely lower the oxygen content of the atmosphere. Well, anyway, at the end
Yeah.
of this period known as the Permian, uh, I think it's important to remember a simple quote. And if anyone in the chat can place this, you win. Vandalia, you're disqualified. Life cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain something of equal value must be lost.
And a lot of things were lost.
Yep, the world before the dinosaurs was just as flourishing as it was during the height of their reign.
Oh yeah.
And 252 million years ago, life was thriving. Fast synapsids ruled the land, the ones taking a nap here. Huge amphibians hunted prey from the water's edge, like an alligator, and huge insects darted through primitive forests. And then the Earth tried to split in half.
Yeah.
The continental crust under what is now Asia tore apart, and a flood of lava swept across an area that was 3/4 the size of the continental US.
And
And
this
it
was
kept pouring out for a literal million years.
this was the
Yeah.
biggest of them all, but this was the third of the big ones.
This
It's
was
the fourth biggest. It's the fourth mass extinction in timeline. I know it's the biggest one, but it's the fourth, right?
No, the
it's either
Triassic,
the
the
Triassic Jurassic has one too.
yeah.
But
Yeah, see, the first one, the first big one was the I think the the S or S the O one.
Ordovician, Silurian.
Oh,
And
I'm
then-
counting ice
Devonian,
ball too.
then
That's why.
late Devonian, then this one, then the Jurassic, and then the asteroid
the
one.
Cretaceous.
Of course,
Yeah.
it's six. If you count the Great Oxidation event, that's a different one.
I'm counting snowball when before we really got
So,
big
Snowball Earth.
cell things. The entire world froze over.
Yeah, that's I guess that's the second one. Like if you count the first one as the oxygen holocaust, like people call it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But anyways,
Plus,
at any rate,
plus little ones in between all these things.
I do want to emphasize though, enough lava poured out of here to cover the
Oh, yeah.
U.S. hundreds of feet deep.
yeah, I thought
lava.
I think it's bad what happened. The Great Dying.
Mhm.
I like the asteroid was bad, but the asteroid, the life could probably survive from this. There was a very good chance that the Great Dying just killed life forever.
At least macroscopic life.
Yeah, just
And
everything that's on a single cell in dead.
And we know that lava was pouring out for a million years because we can date when lava erupts really accurately.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I heard that this great lava event was more traumatic to life because we were all one continent still. If it had been separated, it might have
The
been as
main
bad.
issue is that it lasted for a million. Most other mass extinctions happen within like mind you, the asteroid
10,000 years at most.
10,000 years at most. The asteroid is one awful day. The Great Dying. It wasn't the fact that it was so bad. It was that it lasted so long, literally choking the Earth to death for a million years.
And on that note, the part of the reason it was so deadly is because the lava that flowed out literally cooked and melted underlying rocks.
Mhm.
Rocks that were filled with carbonates and coal. So a ton of carbon burned, sending massive plumes up into the atmosphere and raining back down as acid rain.
Mhm.
So just acid flowing into the ocean for a million years. It's estimated that 90% of species total died out in this event.
95% of animal species.
Yeah,
But somehow we survived. Not
A
human.
lot of things
Somehow.
survived. I wouldn't give it on just us. It was complete luck.
Yeah.
We
It is-
we are the 5%.
Yeah. The other thing this did, which is why we can talk about this, is that the oceans were boiling. Actually
boiling
boiling.
acid.
So everything that was like in the top maybe 1,000 or 100,000 feet of the sea, just dead.
And I guess that all those deaths left a big niche open for people for new sea
We'll
people.
get to that big niches, yeah.
That's a good guess. And on that note, our next topic is recovering from extinction. So, despite the utter horrific cataclysm that
Hell.
life just went through, it didn't take long for it to return. Since many of the pre existing niches were just erased, plants and animals of all kinds rapidly refilled their ecosystems with a fresh variety of life. In fact, when early geologists split the Triassic period, they divided it into an early half and a late half. And this was just based on the number of species they saw. They split it about in half. When we developed radiometric dating, we found out that the early Triassic takes up 4 million years out of 50.
Yeah.
Less than 10% of the time, half of the new species variety. It's insane how quickly life bounced back from the most horrific thing in Earth's history.
It bounced back faster than the KPG, at least comparatively for how devastating it was.
Mm-hmm. And part of that might have been just because there were so many of these niches open.
Yeah.
And just for anyone listening who doesn't know, a niche is a role that an organism fills in an environment. So a predator, an herbivore of a specific kind of plant. There's a lot of niches.
Mm-hmm.
And when a lot of them are open, animals are going to evolve to fill those niches.
And with a lot less competition, animals tend to ignore the rules of evolution to an extent.
At least for a time.
Yeah.
And that's how you get so many really weird forms, too, which you'll see if you ever look up Triassic life.
Awful monsters.
Now, in evolutionary biology / paleontology, an abrupt rise in diversity like this is called an adaptive radiation. Most of our iconic Mesozoic reptiles appeared within this radiation, or at least their early ancestors did. Oh, and really quick, thank you, Maya. Yeah, I just hit 700 subscribers either late last night or this morning. So thank you, folks. Another milestone. And adaptive radiations, for the record, can occur for a lot of reasons, but they typically occur pretty easily after a mass extinction.
Yeah, it's either after mass extinction or something finds itself on an island with no competition. It's one of those two usually.
And interestingly enough, it seems like a lot of reptiles became semi-aquatic during this time. Or maybe it's more so that those with semi-aquatic tendencies were more likely to survive the Great Dying.
Yes.
Which, interestingly enough, is a pattern we see with the next two mass extinctions. So there might be something there.
Yeah. It appears that if you're able to go underwater, not like fully swim, but like live in a lake or a river, you tend to be fine if you're just able to just sit there and do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you have a cold or a low metabolism.
Yeah.
Ponds and lakes are fairly stable as long as not too much acid rain's being pumped into them.
Yeah.
And of these new swimming reptiles, one of them was kind of weird because as soon as the Triassic begins, we find them in the oceans perfectly adapted for life in the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a process that had to have taken millions of years going through the late Permian. For reference, it took whales about 15 million years
And
to
whales
become what we would recognize as whales.
do it fast too.
Yeah, whales did it really fast.
Yeah, whales do it really fast. It takes a long time to go from land creature to I have no limbs and live in the water.
Mhm.
So was it faster to go one direction or the other direction?
It's faster to go into the water than out of
Yeah.
it.
Almost every land animal can swim, and if you can swim, you
Yeah.
can be put in situations where there's an evolutionary pressure to be better at swimming. It's
But
really easy to do.
fish have only come out of the water once.
Uh, there are living fish that have
I
recently evolved
like-
to be out of the water.
I
but
mean,
it-
like fully. Like
I
I
guess
know what you mean.
all tetrapods have. You mean all the
yes, all tetrapods have one ancestor. There's
Yeah,
not groups
yes.
of weird other triple limbed things running around.
Most likely. But anyway, we don't see this rise or this descent into the oceans. They just appear, and because they went into this new era with little to no competition, they rapidly took over the world. But before we get to them, let's meet a few of the strange things that they ruled over, because those are pretty interesting and don't get enough attention.
My favorite category: weird, dumb things that try to swim.
Yes.
So, the Triassic is weird. We've been saying this a few times, but you can see these pictures here, and these aren't even the weirdest things. Some of the weirdest things live on land. They just keep going in the water. So again clockwise. There's Nothosaurus at the top. We'll start with that. Those are the most normal. It's just if a lizard decided to do what an otter did.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. And they're probably related to plesiosaurs slightly, maybe. I'll get
They're
to
at least a basal member of the group, if
I
not
will-
on the direct line.
Yeah. Below that is Adapopentatus, who is an awful creature. But we thought it was worse because the first skull we found was squished laterally, so that weird dumb spoon mouth we had. We thought it had a mouth that opened vertically.
I didn't do that. That was weird.
It does a mouth that opened vertically. So we thought it had its lip grew teeth and opened like this, like a zipper. There's a great image from where the paper is described. It's awful. I hate it. Then there's Van Clevia, which is the only creature to ever make a paddle tail not out of bone. It's out of its own. It's out of scales. That's what the paddle is made of. It's out of scales. It also, for some reason, is saber-tooth. And I don't think we know what Van Clevia is, right? It's just kind of there.
I think it's an Archosauriform.
That's
But really quick, I do have pictures. This is what we thought
Ah,
Tetraodontatus looked
awful, disgusting.
Yeah, turns out the fossil was just squished, and it actually looked a lot more normal. It looked like this. This is
Normal.
probably
Yeah.
one of the most famous images of the creature.
Yeah. You know the best part about the Triassic is the previous image, with the Adapopentatus, the wrong one. We didn't question that because it was in the Triassic. We just okay, yeah, I guess that's how that looked. Like
That's just how weird life gets in this period.
And then
It's
there's Henotus.
absurd.
That's not a turtle. It only has one tooth. Just weird and dumb. And it is
Well,
part
one
of
tooth on each side of the roof of its mouth.
Yeah, no. It's a placodont, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which placodonts appear to be this early radiation of things in the water that kind of just become turtles because things like to become turtles for some reason.
Well, first they become iguanas, then they become turtles.
Oh yes, I forgot they do that. What
Also,
else?
these dark dots here are its eyes. Its eyes are on the front of its face like a predator.
Yet it did, which is dumb.
But it ate
looks
clams.
so stupid.
It needed that precision to track down those plants.
No, no, well, no,
Clams.
yeah, clams probably.
Oh, okay.
I don't. There are other weird things in Triassic, but those things are on land. And sorry, I just had mental flashbacks to figuring out what the fuck longest squama is. I'm allowed to swear, right?
We prefer minimal swearing, but it's
Gotcha.
okay. It's looked at. It
Longest
happens.
squama, which if you know what that is,
We have a $500 swear jar. No, just kidding.
Oh,
I could. Yeah, no, I would leave immediately. But yes, Jurassic's weird, and that's because, as Doc said, with everything dead, evolution tends to basically
go berserk.
ignore the rule, go berserk, yeah, that do the best job, and kind of just, if you can do it, go ahead. And everything kind of just files out from there of what is the actual best thing to do. Um, oh yes, and with, as Kenan just said, Sauropterygians, which are a group of things we know existed, but we have no idea where they came from. They kind of also just appear
Well,
semi-aquatic.
they're forms, right?
Oh, I think.
I think.
Yeah, I don't study basal ones. I want to, but um, Jurassic's weird. If you ever want to just go on like YouTube or Wikipedia and just look up weird Jurassic reptiles. You'll It's an endless list of awful things.
Yes. And I did also just want to shout out a couple things with these guys. Hinodus keliops translates to one-toothed turtle face.
Mm-hmm.
Atapodentatus, weird tooth.
Yeah,
And then there are apparently 12 species of Nothosaurus. So
all of them valid too.
yeah, so whatever these guys were doing was
Oh,
so successful.
the other thing with Nothosaurus can go from like this big, like a foot long, they're 2 feet long, to 8 or 9 feet long. The size variation, right?
Dom, you're double that size.
Oh yeah, you're right. 20 feet long. Like these are seals. The monster creatures. Yeah, I forgot how big. I forgot how big they can get. Yeah, we have
big.
eggs for these guys, and we have nests for them too. No, not eggs. They gave live birth. I'm wrong. We have nests for them
Yeah, I
and
was gonna
babies.
say.
So
Alright.
that reminds me.
Yeah.
Did a lot of these things that went to the seas transition into live birth?
That's a great question.
Probably.
Yes. But really quick, so we just went over the weird things of the Triassic. Here's something that's a little less weird until you know what it is, and then it gets weirder.
Or you look at the bones.
Yeah. These are some of the first ichthyosaurs. And the first ones we know of come from the earliest Triassic deposits, about 250 million years old. And that's less than 2 million years into the Triassic.
And they're already
So
in the water.
With how derived they are, they have to have appeared at some point in the Permian. Like again, for whales, they went from a hoofed wolf thing to a dolphin in about 15 million years.
How long did it take
These
to
are
get to
already at dolphin
Ambulocetus?
stage.
Ambulocetus appears what, around 40 million years ago? 50 million years
I think
ago?
3 or 4 million years after
Yeah.
the previous thing I can't think of. Little
I
furry
what,
thing.
Yeah, weird furry wolf thing.
This too.
Now
Yes.
these are what people call the reptile dolphins, right?
Fish lizard, yeah.
Yep. And
and
again, thanks to the clean slate the extinction provided, the ichthyosaurs rapidly diversified. There were fish hunters, macro predators, meaning eating things around your size or slightly smaller.
We'll get to those in a bit.
There were filter feeders. Apparently, some of them convergently evolved baleen, like the thing that whales have.
Hupasuchus is you pull up a picture of it. It's dumb. It's also like 12 inches long.
Yeah.
And
It's so dumb and stupid.
and because of how they walked on land, these guys had vertical tails instead of horizontal tails like the whales and dolphins have.
Well,
Oh.
because whales and how the tail structure is kind of just random, but basically
Okay.
it's it's so dumb and stupid. Oh my god, look at its dumb face.
Yeah, this thing had baleen like a whale.
It's so dumb and
And
stupid.
this is by Nick's Draws Stuff, who does a lot of really good stuff.
He does. It's
I
so
will
dumb
say.
and it's 12 inches long. It's this big. It's
Yep.
Sorry. Hupesukis bothers me. But ichthyosaurs bother me on an emotional level. Uh, but yeah, they basically do everything. The other thing that they do a few things with their skeletons. One,
Mhm.
they evolve fish vertebrae for some reason, which is disgusting and awful. They turn their vertebrae back into fish vertebrae.
It's horrific and they're stupid, but they're also really cool.
Don't you the other thing they do with their hands? The pavement road they do with their hands.
The bones of their hands turn into cobblestones
Actual cobble. Like,
as a flipper.
the good pictures from Ophthalmosaurus. It's not.
Yeah, we'll see some photos of ichthyosaur hands later, but
Yeah.
before that, as I said, ichthyosaurs rapidly diversify, meaning they go from about human size to not very fast.
The giants. Ichthyosaurs get big. They are probably the first true giants of the natural world. At least vertebrate wise.
So how big were they compared to our modern sea giants?
Same size.
Oh, okay.
There are fragmentary remains that could belong to ichthyosaurs, rivaling a blue whale.
Beating it in weight.
Beating it in weight?
Beat it with the biggest species, the biggest bones that are assigned to Ichthyotitan, 110, 120 tons.
So yeah, possibly the biggest things to ever live.
Yeah,
Put that in your brain.
Yeah, the force rulers of the seas are the ichthyosaurs. They got big. They got really big. Most of these belong to one main group, which only lived during the Triassic. They're the Shastosaurs, which are awful. There's actually a picture down there with the Triassic giants that shows the main four with Himalayasaurus, Shastosaurus, Shonisaurus, and the newest one, Ichthyotitan, which the average estimated length for the most complete ichthyotitan we have is 25 meters, which is disgustingly huge. The
Yep.
only thing to get that big is whales, like properly that big is whales. Nothing else reaches close to that size.
These things went from human sized to bigger than the largest sauropods in about 10 million years at most.
Yeah, they do. And they last until the end of the Triassic. They seem to all die out at the end of the Triassic, probably due to the mass extinctions. But the other thing that we initially thought that most of these were either filter feeders or sperm whale analogs, diving deep, maybe catching big squid and leaving. We've discovered teeth from I know Himalayasaurus and Shastosaurus at least, and also
Shonisaurus too.
Chonisaurus, but Chonisaurus is a bit other things. But also Spondylus, who is there, who is a weird, awful thing as well. It's part of the Spondylines, which appeared to be the first proper macropredatory ichthyosaurs. I think they appear before Shastosaurs, if I remember correctly.
I think so, slightly.
But they do a very common thing, like most marine predators you will see, besides one, they don't get sharp teeth, or they do with sharp teeth. They develop railroad spikes for teeth, which are these. A best example is T-Rex, but T-Rex isn't even a real railroad spike compared to the later things and ichthyosaurs. It's basically being impaled by a stake. And what these things must have been hunting besides each other, actually, with Shonisaurus in particular. Who? Oh, by the names, I should probably mention what those names come from.
Well, we can get them later. What were you building to?
I'm talking about I was going to mention the awful Jurassic Kraken.
Ah, yes.
So there is a theory developed by an insane we don't have enough viewers for me not to hound paleontologists. I'm not going to say his name, but by an insane person who, because of the way the vertebrae of Shonisaurus was found, that it semi resembled an octopus, kind of. He was convinced there was a hyper intelligent octopus that was killing Shonisaurs and depicting art of itself using its vertebrae.
For the record, nobody else thinks this is remotely close to a valid idea.
No, yes, this is dumb. Because we would find fossils of it because there's three things you find Shonisaurus with. You find fish, you find squid beaks, tiny ones, and then you find one of the largest ichthyosaurs ever known. So yeah, it appears that Shonisaurus might have been a sperm whale analog squid eater. The other ones definitely were macropredatory and hunting other vertebrates.
Mm-hmm. And a little fun
Their
fact
names.
about Ichthyotitan up here. This was just described either last year or the year before.
It was last
and
year
it was
in about
found by-
March.
Huh?
Last year in March, I believe.
Yep. And it was discovered by a little girl on vacation with her family at the beach.
Yeah.
So-
she found
Happens with a lot of fossils.
So
Yeah,
like
it was-
so like how the first ichthyosaur was found by a girl. on-
No, we're getting ahead.
No spoiler.
Well,
you got
is this
20
a spoiler
bucks,
if everyone
by
knows
the
it by
way.
now? Is that spoiler if it's been
Yeah.
known for like 300 years?
It is a spoiler for the presentation.
It is. But their names, because we've been doing that for the names. The five were shown here. Are kind of, except for Cindospondylus, kind of self-explanatory. Ichthyotitan means big fish. Which I actually am a bit concerned that Ichthyotitan wasn't taken by some weird Devonian thing until
Kinda.
Shastasaurus, I believe, just means Shasta's lizard, if I remember
Like
correctly.
Mount Shasta, right?
I believe it's Mount Shasta. Yes. I'm checking Cindospondylus because I'm Shonisaurus.
Shonisaurus is named for the Shoshone Mountains. And Himalayasaurus, just guess.
Yeah.
Just guess what that's named for.
How the fuck? Sorry, Cindospondylus is such a dumb word.
We have something for you guys.
Yes, while you're figuring that out, Dom, $20 super chat. Thank you very much from Vamsy Jessica Manda. Lots of great information. Thank you guys. We enjoy listening every time.
I should have guessed. Cindospondylus means cupped vertebrae in reference that it's a fish vertebrae.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say thank you very much for the super chat and glad to have you along. Yeah, if anyone else would like to help support these streams, I have a super chat goal going in my chat right now. I think that puts us one towards the goal. And if you guys reach it, you get to choose whatever we cover next time. Let's see. Do you have anything else to say on the Triassic giants, Dom?
I don't, except for I already mentioned the fact that it seems all of them die out during the Jurassic Triassic extinction, which leads to another group to take their role.
Yes, and to be honest, it's not really a huge surprise that they go extinct. Usually, the most specialized and especially the largest animals are some of the first to go when the environment
predators
can no longer support them.
Predators especially. Yeah.
All right. But next, we're going to step away from prehistory for a second and cover a fairly important topic and person.
The second most important person to all of paleontology, in my opinion.
Extremely important. So much so that she has been given the title the mother of paleontology.
Mhm.
And we won't make this too long because this is a paleontology stream, but I mean she's a paleontologist. We won't take forever, but there's some
Yeah.
important things to cover. To start with, she sells seashells down by the seashore. Is a tongue twister I was taught as a kid,
Mhm.
but it has a much longer history, and in fact, it might trace back to the early 1800s to a young British girl who, along with her sister, would find fossils and shells and sell them to tourists and collectors. Her name was Mary Anning. Uh, Mary made her living by finding fossils and selling them to the naturalists of the day, though her and her family always struggled with money. She discovered Ichthyosaurus, Plesiosaurus, and dozens of other species, including, I just learned today, Dimorphodon. She
Yeah,
discovered the first British pterosaur.
I believe she also discovered Pliosaurus because the nickname for it is Mary Anning's monster.
I would not be surprised. And actually, in scientific circles, she was really well known for her
Oh,
expertise in fossil finding and anatomy. And
yeah.
prominent naturalists would write to her seeking advice on their publications.
But not
Mhm.
giving her any credit, I guess,
Oh
from.
no, they
Well,
actually gave her a lot of credit. That's why
Okay.
we yeah.
some people did, some people
Yes.
didn't, but because she was a woman of of the day, she was not allowed to publish
No.
any research.
Yeah.
She was excluded from the scientific community. In the 1830s, she fell upon hard times financially, and a friend of hers sold prints displaying her discoveries to help her out. In fact, this is Duria Antiquia, I'm probably saying that terribly,
Yes.
by Henry de la Beche, who was a geologist and friend of Mary Anning. Most of the species in this image were discovered by her.
Oh, I
It,
didn't even sorry, I didn't know what Kaden just said in the chat that
hmm,
species of ichthyosaur is named after her. I didn't even know that.
good.
Good that you
She
did not know
deserves
that, or
more
good that it
both.
happened.
She
Good that
deserves a
there's one
bunch of
named
names.
after her. Wish it happened sooner.
Yeah.
Um, and again, owing to her expertise and incredibly important discoveries, many people consider her to be the mother of paleontology. Again, this was right around when the field actually got started. Most of her discoveries were made before the theory of well, all of her discoveries were made
Yeah.
before the theory of evolution was an idea for Darwin.
Mm-hmm.
But this title is unfortunately it's posthumous, given to her long after her passing in 1847 from breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And her story is a reminder that good scientists can come from anywhere, but due to economic and historic factors or discriminatory policies, many people will never have the opportunity to pursue their interests, both in and
True.
out of science, or be given the credit they deserve.
Yeah. But at
And
least we have been able to give her the credit she deserves, and she is looked upon with the greats of paleontology, like Sir Richard Owen himself. Almost with the
if not
exact
in higher opinion, because she wasn't a gigantic asshole.
well, from what I've learned about paleontology, 90% of paleontologists from before like 1960 or 1950 are gigantic assholes because that kind of just came with the territory because you need to
Well,
fight for your science.
at any rate, I have heard from at least one female paleontologist, or at least one woman paleontologist, that a lot of people see her as an inspirational figure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she deserves to be remembered and respected,
Uh,
as do a lot of women in STEM who still have to face certain factors, unfortunately.
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if like maybe in 100 years she actually becomes like the patron saint of fossil hunting or something of that sort.
Might not be a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Sorry for the tangent there, folks, but really important bit of history that's tied in with a lot of these marine reptiles, because as you can probably tell by this drawing of her discoveries,
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of the early ones were found by her.
Yes.
And partially described too, because again, she was a very excellent anatomist.
She just wasn't allowed to name them. I would actually be curious what she would have named them. Because it means a bunch of groups would have been differently named.
Maybe. And also, I just wanted to say this is probably the most famous painting of her with her dog Trey, who
Oh
would
yeah.
go with her fossil hunting.
Every time.
Anyway, back to the reptiles. Starting with Ichthyosaurus. And the fossil in the top right was one of Mary Anning's discoveries. Ichthyosaurus was very important to the early field of paleontology. Nothing like it had ever really been seen before. It was a reptile, but one shaped like a fish or a dolphin. In particular, this animal is named after its vertebrae, which, as we've gone over, look like those of a fish, which is something we don't see even in any other marine reptiles. And as Dom mentioned earlier, they also turn their fins into pavement for some reason. They're just solid bone. They don't have fingers anymore. They have a paddle made of cobblestones. It's disgusting. But it's known for another kind of weird feature. Ichthyosaurs, and Ichthyosaurus specifically, gave live birth. There have been a lot of fossils of pregnant ichthyosaurs just found all over the world. And while a reptile giving birth might sound strange, it's actually really common. There are hundreds of living species of reptiles that give birth. And it seems that at least most lines of marine reptiles evolved this independently from egg-laying ancestors.
Yeah, isn't that one of those live birth things? Something that creation is used to quote prove the flood.
They'll show a picture of an ichthyosaur with a baby partially outside of the birth canal. Yeah.
Yes, that's probably one of the most famous. I think that's Ichthyosaurus. Is that Ophthalmosaurus or Ichthyosaurus itself?
Well, one,
Or is it
there's
both?
dozens of them. I think the most
Yeah.
famous one is Stenopterygius,
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
which I remember because it appears later. And speaking of the pregnant ichthyosaurs, this is a photo from a paper describing one. These are the ribs of the mother, and these are the vertebrae and other assorted bones of the fetus. And don't know if they just had a high mortality rate while pregnant or what, but we have a lot of them. Which does also mean that they were really successful because we have a ton of fossils of them. And Ichthyosaurus, along with most of Mary Anning's finds, comes from the early Jurassic. So we are out of the Triassic now. We are into the next era after another mass extinction, which lets other things take
Be weird.
place.
Now,
Yes.
did the Gowanda Eurasia split affect these guys as much as they did the land animals?
Probably why they went extinct.
It would have really affected ocean currents. Anytime
Yeah.
continents move, they do that. Which can change a whole lot of things under the sea. Currents are
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah. It can completely wipe out ecosystems, create completely new ones, and even if it could be reestablished stuff in like a million years, the predators, aka all the big ichthyosaurs, would just be wiped out basically within probably the first 100,000 years.
If that.
Yeah, because all their prey's moved or dead.
Yep. But again, we're after another mass extinction, so things can get weird again.
They do.
Including the ichthyosaurs. So their general body plan kind of stays the same, but like modern whales, ichthyosaurs specialize in different ways.
Mhm.
Stenopterygius up here, which I just mentioned, and this is one of the more famous pregnant ichthyosaur
Yes.
fossils. They develop really reinforced scleral rings. And scleral rings are rings of bone inside the sclera of your eye. They're rare in mammals, but very common in other groups. And these reinforced rings have been interpreted as giving extra strength while diving, which would allow them to hunt at deeper depths. They also give more muscle attachment points, so you have more control over the eye and the inner eye, so it could probably see in lower light conditions as well. This one in particular either died giving birth or was pregnant when it died, with one of the babies being pushed out during decomposition. It goes back and forth for different individual fossils. Meanwhile, other ichthyosaurs like Uranosaurus here grow these super long upper jaws. Maybe, and it says swordfish here, but maybe enabling them to hunt like modern sawfish, where they swim up to their prey and smack it from the side. But after the early Jurassic, ichthyosaur diversity slowly declines, and
They're, no,
it
they're no longer
unfortunately doesn't pick back up.
they're no longer the top guys under the water.
Nope. There's a lot of competition now.
Yeah, so things get still pretty weird. Actually, I would describe the next group as weird and strange and dumb.
Weird, strange, dumb, and a little familiar, perhaps.
The boys.
So, remember the Nothosaurs? Meet their possible distant descendants.
Probably at least closely related descendants.
Yes. So from reptiles like those, a new line of marine reptiles appeared.
The
These
plesiosaurs.
ones, yes. These ones use their limbs to propel themselves underwater rather than swinging their tails like an ichthyosaur.
They appear to actually be the first creatures to fully do flipper only locomotion, as in like free form swimming.
Mhm.
Um,
And one of the earliest known plesiosaurs is Plesiosaurus, actually. Also, by Mary Anning. This is her drawing of an almost complete skeleton she found.
that's a drawing. Oh, I didn't realize that was a drawing until
Yes. She
That's-
drew this in a letter that she sent to a naturalist.
who probably looked at that and was like, "Where did you get a photograph 100 years before its existence?"
And plesiosaurs are typically long-necked reptiles that typically hunted small fish.
Tip.
These necks were extremely mobile and likely made it easier for them to get close to fish without being sensed. Fish have a sense called, or
Lateral
fish have an
line.
organ called a lateral line running down their sides that lets them feel pressure waves in the water. It's basically an advanced sense of touch. Smaller objects disturb water less, possibly letting a big-bodied plesiosaur get close thanks to its tiny head.
This probably goes for the later ones that Doc will talk about, but these early ones, it might have just been a thing that they kept from being nothosaurs or similar things, and these two are plesiosaurus I mentioned, but also there's Attenborosaurus, which plesiosaurs are usually split up into two groups. There is the basal plesiosaurs, which are plesiosaurines. Forgot which is the order. But I know it
don't. It looks like it's a family distinction.
Oh, that's okay. That's good to know. But there's plesiosaurs, and they're very basal, and they split off very early on in the early Jurassic. They split off into two groups: the plesiosaurs, which the most basal one is Plesiosaurus itself, the true ones, and then the pliosaurs, which we'll get into what that fully means later. But the pliosaurs, they start out very similar, but they eventually they fill the niche those ichthyosaurs left.
No, I think we mentioned this. You asked this before the stream started, but what's part of, is it pliosaur part of all? Is all pliosaurs plesiosaurs, or is all plesiosaurs pliosaurs?
if depending on your which plesiosaur you're using, the group itself, plesiosaur includes pliosaurs. Plesiosauroids, I believe, are not pliosaurs.
Or plesiosaurids. So
Thank you.
all pliosaurs are plesiosaurs, is the simple way to say it.
Yeah, there.
But with that said, the groups wiggle a bit. You
Yeah.
might have noticed I said typically up here. There are exceptions to a lot of things in this group.
So it's
Because-
not a monolithic clade. It's like a with other.
No,
No.
it is monolithic.
Or
It just
monophyletic.
monophyletic.
They
They
split
just
from
do
a
weird
common
and
ancestor.
dumb. They just do weird and dumb things.
Okay, I forget the names of the other two other ones. I forget how to pronounce them.
Well, the big thing is, even though they do split, they stay very similar, at least in the body. So similar environmental pressures can push them to evolve in similar ways. So
Yeah.
they mirror each other in different situations. Also,
Yes.
hello, Big Bad Mama in the chat.
It does appear though that the pliosaurs are the first radiation. They radiate really fast than the plesiosaurs or plesiosaurids, I should say.
Yep, because
I don't
there's
know-
an open space.
I believe they're next, right?
Yes.
My boys. So the pliosaurs. We'll talk about more of them later, as one of them is the mascot of the place I used to work at and hopefully still work at later this year. But it appears some of the plesiosaurs took the macropredatory niche to the most logical extreme. They decided to turn their entire body into a head. And I mean that as not really a joke. Pliosaurs, the big ones, their heads are about a third or sometimes closing on a half of their total body length.
Mhm.
Now, during the Jurassic, they seem to explode in things. There were macropredatory ones, like Pliosaurus itself, and you may have heard of, I don't know, predator things online, but Pliosaurus itself was the main king of the Jurassic. With
It was the biggest
7.
Jurassic pliosaur, right?
What?
It was the biggest Jurassic pliosaur, right?
Well, it was because there's 7 of them. There's 7 Pliosaurus species. Then there are other smaller ones like Liopleurodon, which you might have seen in Walking with Dinosaurs, where it's severely oversized and not in the niche it should be. But Liopleurodon appears to be a specialized pliosaur, where it has these nice teeth in the front that almost stick out. That might have been good for catching soft-bodied creatures. But this is where the railroad spike analogy really comes in.
Sorry, just to expand on that, we have Liopleurodon specimens with tons of squid in their bellies.
Beaks.
So
Yeah, tons of them.
they like soft things.
But no, these are railroad spikes. I think they're serrated, but these things were not cutting through. They were biting you in half or swallowing you whole and you weren't escaping. Monsters. And again, they didn't get that big on terms of the other ones, like maybe 30, 40 feet long. But if you're 30, 40 feet long and a third of your body length is your head, that's horrifying to look at. If
You have a bear trap for a face, and everything looks like a bear.
Yeah. No, they get massive. It also, I don't know, might not be true, but I have heard studies that pliosaurs might swim in a different way than the more derived plesiosaurs in the Cretaceous. I don't know if that's true, but I've heard it.
Anything about that, but with how different their bodies get, I wouldn't be surprised.
They do swim different from turtles, though. Turtles swim with their only front flippers. All plesiosaurs swim with all 4 of their flippers. Yeah.
And another thing to note is many of these guys appear to have been generalists. Like when they're found with gut contents, they have a lot of different things in their bellies. And when we find fossils of other things in the environment, we find pliosaur bite marks
on everything. They did not care if you moved, and as Doc says in the thing, could fit in its mouth, it would try to fit you in its mouth.
Even if you didn't, it would try to take a bite at you.
Yeah. Oh, these things probably hated each other.
Oh, Lethargo in the chat is right. It is a Chibisaurus.
Yeah, I hate you. You ruined my mascot. Actually, my mascot is a worse name than Chibisaurus. We'll get to
Yeah.
Plasterosaurus later.
Well, for right now, what we have next is, I think, a little smaller, if I remember my slide order right. I did.
You did.
Uh,
Not that much smaller with the big ones.
most of them were smaller, at least. So what we have on screen right now is a marine crocodilian. Now, you might have heard, or crocodilomorph, actually, but there is a difference. You might be familiar with saltwater crocodiles. These are more salty.
A bit.
Because during the Jurassic, several groups of crocodilomorphs took to the sea. They were late to the party, but they took off pretty quick. And again, keep in mind, this is after a mass extinction, so new things fill in old areas. So these are basically a crocodile that lives like an ichthyosaur.
And if you want to hear more about the crocodile islands, me and Doc here did a whole episode of these archosaur brands and the pterosaurs.
Yes.
With the marine reptiles, though, these seem to break a rule, and it's probably the reason why dinosaurs never went in the water. That all archosaurs appear to only be able to lay eggs. It seems that the metriorhynchids, as these are the only archosaurs to break that rule.
Unless plesiosaurs are archosaurs.
Yes, which we don't know that, but it looks to be unlikely that Sauropterygium.
On that note, plesiosaurs gave live birth.
No, yeah.
Though, weirdly enough, ichthyosaurs gave birth to tons of small babies, while plesiosaurs seem to have given birth to one or two big babies at a time.
And they actually did birth in different ways. Plesiosaur. So most things you give birth underwater, you want to do the tail first, because so the baby doesn't immediately inhale a bunch of water. Because of how long the necks of some of the later plesiosaurs got, they were born head first with the neck curled in behind the tail.
Mm-hmm. They're weird, but cool, because I have to find a workaround.
Caden, we haven't forgot them. Don't worry. We'll talk about them later.
We'll talk about them later.
Yeah. So as far as we know, these marine crocodiles are currently dinosaurs' closest relatives of the sea creatures.
Yes. Well, birds.
Yes.
Well, there are marine birds. But yeah.
Well, that would be dinosaurs themselves.
Yes. It seems that the metriorhynchids are the closest thing to dinosaurs that aren't dinosaurs themselves that go in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Until we discover fully aquatic Spinosaurus, which I guarantee will happen
eventually. Yeah.
I'm just waiting for mutation that gives penguins the ability to give birth underwater, that they get fully aquatic.
At least with dinosaurs, it seems to be a pretty solid limitation. But penguins might be going in the right direction, usually laying one huge egg.
Yeah, it tends to bleed in laying one huge egg, and then eventually you lay your egg inside yourself, like how sharks do it, and then they hatch in a weird sac in your body.
Yeah. Unless you're an ichthyosaur.
Yeah.
Or most snakes.
Or
most live-bearing snakes.
Or mosasaurs.
Or we'll get to that. But the thing about these marine crocodilians, they get big, like 20-ish feet. They never get massive.
I thought Geosaurus got massive. Wait, let me check.
Geosaurus? I thought it was about average size.
Let me check. I thought one got up to 30 feet. I might be misremembering things though.
I'm seeing G Giganteus being 3 meters long.
I'm misremembering things.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible. It's just I haven't heard of any. They do seem to have disproportionately big heads, though.
They do, which makes sense. Because these things appear to actually kind of have kind of replace the, because there's a lot less generalist pliosaurs. There are a lot, but it seems that pliosaurs didn't steal all of the generalist niches from the ichthyosaurs, and that's why these things appear to thrive.
Like pliosaurs don't seem to get super fast, but these
No,
guys.
they don't.
So faster than a pliosaur, more bite than an ichthyosaur.
Yeah.
It's a Superman reference.
And also, weirdly enough, we have a Metriorhynchus, I think, or at least a Metriorhynchid skeleton with a part of a gill from the largest species of fish to ever live in its belly.
Yes, which has been adapted into the Sea Monsters episode.
Yes, walking with sea monsters.
Oh, the other thing they do weird is that their back flippers appear to be bigger, longer, more developed than their front flippers, which is a weird thing that nothing else does.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, Thalattosuchians. Ah, my boy!
Yep. Real quick, now we are moving into the early Cretaceous.
Yes.
So we're past the Jurassic now.
It doesn't seem during the early Cretaceous, things were in the seas were changing very heavily. Derived plesiosaurs get very weird and very cool. And Thalattosuchians and pliosaurs seem to kind of bottleneck themselves into certain niches. And with it, well, the niche that the pliosaurs chose was the title of the slide, the Ocean Murderers. And I mean, and I did not make that up. That is the name of the group that lives into the Cretaceous, are Thalatophonia, which means ocean murder, which is great.
Yep.
But these early Cretaceous ones there's three big ones that we know of, which are Brachiochenius, Kronosaurus, and Megacephalosaurus. These things got big, as there's a picture right there of the Harvard Kronosaurus, with a few extra ribs and vertebrae, because we don't know which ones are fake and which ones aren't. Standing next to the preparator at the time. I forgot her name, but the preparator at the time, because the initial photo op woman called out, so they had her, which is cool. And the image has been recreated like a few years ago. She's a nice person. But you can just see that woman, by the way, is not a small woman. She's about 5'6", 5'4". Look how big that skull is. That's massive. And these things appear to be the kings of the sea for the longest time. But the way they went extinct appears to not be related to competition, as the later ones do coexist with the largest mosasaurs.
And that's right.
I have to talk about it if I want to talk about Brachiochenius.
Also, I think, especially if Kronosaurus is one of the last ones, they die out before the mosasaurs get big.
Megacephalosaurus is Western Interior Seaway.
Megacephalosaurus.
It's Western Interior Seaway. It's 90 million years ago.
Okay, then I guess just barely over 93 million years ago. That's before the big mosas.
It is? When's Tylo?
At least according to Wikipedia. 94 to 93.
Let me check on Brachiochenius then. I might be wrong. I might be wrong then. I was under. Let me check Brachiochenius. Brachiochenius is 90.
Seems to be a junior synonym.
Brachiochenius isn't.
Oh, never mind. No. Oh, there was a species of Brachiochenius that was synonymized.
Yes. Yeah. It appears they do get to us. They do meet the big mosasaurs.
Maybe.
Yeah. Mind you, Brachiochenius is actually pretty small for a pliosaur. So, it's only about 3 meters long.
Okay. Something to note is we don't know which formation it comes from, and it comes from a quarry with 3 possibilities.
That's
So it could
unhelpful.
be anywhere from 90 to 100 million years old.
Okay. So yes, it does appear that these things do go out. My guess would not be due to competition with mosasaurs, because
Yes.
either they didn't see them, or they did see them and were there when they were at their biggest, or some of their biggest. So something else happened in the seas that caused these things to go extinct. My guess is lowering temperatures, or my guess is something to do with temperatures.
I actually mentioned this on a later slide. There's a big climatic shift in the mid Cretaceous. That's
Yes.
why it's split there.
Yeah.
And sea levels rose, ocean currents would have changed, and the world got hotter.
Oh, yes, because something I forgot to mention. It appears pliosaurs were kind of adapted for not Arctic environments, but colder environments. We find them quite a bit in environments that would have been like deeper and colder oceans.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably is why they went extinct. The oceans got too hot, too warm.
So were these guys hot-blooded or cold-blooded?
Everything in this slideshow is quote unquote warm blooded. You have
Yeah.
to be if you are a vertebrate in the ocean.
It seems to be something they also convergently evolve from cold. Well, some of them cold-blooded ancestors, at least.
Yes.
All of the reptiles here are warm-blooded, as far as we know.
Yes. So the pliosaurs die out, and not yet, but something does fill their void. But while something's filling their void, their cousins, the plesiosaurs, appear to go insane with diversity.
Yes, they do. And to answer Caden's question really quick, is
Oh,
it
yeah.
possible that some pliosaurs and polycotylids survived to the end of the Cretaceous? It's absolutely possible. We don't have a lot of deep marine fossils.
But the issue with, and I will be a bit of a pessimist here, marine fossils tend to show a bitter picture and also tend to be biased towards big things. So, unless they were fully open ocean animals, and even then, the fact that we don't find any scrap of them for mosasaurs for 30 million years, no, mosasaurs, pliosaurs for 30 million years after Brachiosaurus and Megacephalosaurus,
Mhm.
that, in my opinion, is a nail in the coffin for them. Polycotylids, I believe, live up till 70 million years, so that's definitely.
I think they reach the end, or at least they get really close.
Hydrothermosaurus gets really close.
Hmm.
Polycotylids get really close, but pliosaurs, I would say probably not. The other issue with that is deep sea creatures tend to not be. Pliosaurs don't have great adaptations for being in the deep sea. It appears the only real marine reptiles that get deep sea enough or get adaptations for deep diving coming up again are ichthyosaurs. So I would say ichthyosaurs and some mosasaurs.
Yeah, some weird mosasaurs.
I would say that probably either it's something that plesiosaurs in general can't do, or that niche was already filled by late surviving ichthyosaurs and then eventually mosasaurs.
And really quick, Dom, this is Chronosaurus, right?
Yes, it's a very heavily reconstructed Chronosaurus.
Do you think this thing would have eaten its son?
Yeah, probably. Actually, I don't know. I would hazard a guess. Pliosaurs are probably great parents because they only gave birth to one gigantic offspring. That's a really good thing for saying these things were great parents. So maybe
That's fair.
not. But yes.
Oh well, still some cool art pieces to come out of that concept.
I guess we
Oh,
could
yes.
always ask the child services of the Mesozoic era.
Well, would Maya Sora be in charge of that?
Probably. The last one.
Anyway, as we find the last of the pliosaurs, another more ancient lineage comes to an end. The last of the ichthyosaurs. Now remember, these things ruled the oceans in the Triassic. But ever since the Jurassic, Triassic mass extinction, they went on a gradual decline. And by the time of the mid Cretaceous, they completely disappear from the fossil record. Now, sure, could some have held on for longer in deep ocean environments? Definitely possible, but we don't have those records,
And
sadly. And we
Yeah.
don't have them today.
hmm
And the mid Cretaceous in general appears to have been a time of quite a bit of change. Many groups on land and in the water disappeared and were replaced by new things.
a lot of turnover.
Yep, the climate changed, sea levels rose, the earth warmed.
So was there
Lots
like
of
a
things happened in a very rapid
so
succession.
so was there like a mini extinction in the middle of the Cretaceous?
I wouldn't call it extinction, more as faunal turnover. There, mind
Which,
you, there probably
it,
were like extinctions, but not a major one.
which I guess I would say it was probably a period of higher rates of extinction,
Yeah.
but not enough to qualify as a mass extinction.
That's why I called it a mini extinction.
It, prolonged change.
kind of like how the late Carboniferous rainforest collapse is like a mini.
Probably, but it mostly appears to be faunal turnover, as in with the new, out with the old. There actually is a great. You can see this in North American faunal deposits, as you lose sauropods, you lose Acrocanthosaurus, and you gain a billion ceratopsians
Mhm.
and
Keep in
hadrosaurs.
mind, this is also just really complicated.
Yes, this is
And
one of the most not well studied. We don't have a lot of the mid Jurassic and mid Cretaceous. We have more
at
mid
least on
Cretaceous,
land.
but this part is very understudy by even Doc himself. He's studying the mid Cretaceous currently, and
Yeah, technically. A
Yeah.
little before, but yeah.
yeah, so it's a very trying time that a lot of things appear, a lot of change appears to be happening. Tyrannosaurs get really stuff. A lot of things under the ocean change. Birds start appearing in the waters.
I mean, the big herbivores and carnivores on land all shift.
Yeah.
Same for in the ocean, at least with carnivores. Like it's a
Uh,
lot of things change,
Yeah.
and they interact in ways that we might never fully understand.
Time machine would be so helpful.
It'd be nice.
Yeah.
And pictured here is Platypterygius, which is one of, if not the last ichthyosaurs, and it dies out about 94 million years ago.
It dies out around the same time as the pliosaurs, which definitely doesn't have any probable meaning.
hmm And it is worth noting, though, that by the time you get to these later ichthyosaurs, they really shorten up their rear fins. Like,
Yeah, no.
even at this time, when they're dying out, they're still changing. They're still
They're still
evolving.
becoming fish. They're really trying to become fish. That is their
Yes.
one goal, is to become a fish.
But as they
Lizard.
disappear, something else starts to appear in the fossil record.
Weird lizard.
Due to the climatic change, a lot of new species evolve. Remember, old things die out, new things appear to fill their place. Dallosaurus here, named for Dallas, Texas, is only about a meter long and seems to be very closely related to monitor lizards. And while monitor lizards are already usually really good swimmers, Dallosaurus went one step beyond with some shortened limbs and a longer, flattened tail and body. And it might be small, but this little guy is a little portent of things to come.
You may even be able to tell what it's to come based on its head. Its head looks. I didn't realize how much its head looks like that.
Oh yeah, this is from the Dallas Museum.
Oh,
I
yes,
chose this picture specifically because it looks like an aquatic compy.
It does. Oh my god! I've decided all Dallosaurs are aquatic compies now.
They're
Just
the
been
right size
decided.
too.
Yeah, they're evil little gremlins. You know what? Actually, Dallosaurs would make great pets, actually. They probably make
Yeah,
great pets. Because most varanids make great pets. At least
Yeah.
around their size.
pretty smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I like this little guy. Keep this image in mind for later.
Yes.
For now, though, as
Weird.
Dom already alluded to, plesiosaurs go nuts.
Yeah.
Do you want to take this one, or do you want me to take this
I
one?
can
Though?
take it. I love my
Okay.
plesiosaurs.
First, I will
I'm-
say this image is posed like this on purpose, next to
Yeah.
this one.
So plesiosaurs during actually around the same time appeared to very much diversify, if not a bit before that. You get two groups that evolve, or two more major groups. You get the elasmosaurs and the polycotylids. The elasmosaurs do a really dumb thing and just keep adding vertebrae to their necks. So much so that when Elasmosaurus was discovered, a very definitely smart man thought that instead of that the head must go on the tail, and erected an entirely new group of tetrapods based on backwards facing vertebrae because he refused to say he put the head on wrong.
Yeah. I wonder who that person was.
I have no idea.
And I didn't put the number in here. I meant to.
72,
So
74.
first, these are two closely related species, both elasmosaurids or eans. This is Albertonectes and Elasmosaurus, which gave its name to the group. As Dom said, its head is on its tail, which is why it's posed like this next to this guy. So you can see just how drastic the change is.
These things got big too, 40 feet long, 50 feet long.
50 feet long. And
Yeah.
Albertonectes has, as far as we know, because we don't have the whole neck, 76 neck vertebrae.
It
Now
is the
was
longest neck compared to its body size of any creature.
Was it-
Maybe the longest
now-
neck straight.
now was the head misplacement on purpose or accidental?
Of accidental, and then he doubled down.
And here, we'll go into that story in half a second. First, there's a lot of weird plesiosaurs that appear during this time.
Probably
Here are a couple of them. Dolly Corincops near here and its relatives
the
converged on
polycotylids.
plesiosaurs. They shortened to the necks, grew the heads.
Yeah, they appear to be actual, like, proper dolphin analogs. With like specialized fish things. We also see that they do keep the live birth stuff. Yeah, Dolichorhynchops, Trinicarium. They're very cool. I like them.
And also the subject of one of my favorite paleo documentaries when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Was it just Sea Monsters?
It was
the
Sea
Nat
Monsters
Geo one?
3D.
Yes. That was great.
And the other-
Another really weird one that... Oh, go ahead.
There's two actually really ones I want to talk about. There's Mortunaria, which is there, which appears to be a weird, almost like brine feeder that like scupped through the muck and soot of the ground and ate whatever was on the bottom. And the other one, which I come out, is Kaiwekia.
Oh, let me get a picture. Well, you describe
Kaiwekia appears to be a clam eating plesiosaur. It has adaptations to eat hard-shelled creatures.
it.
It's
Actually,
a very
didn't,
cool.
I didn't know
thing.
that.
Yeah, I made fun of it because they added an elasmosaur to Path of Titans, and it's the only one that eats clams, and they can't eat clams.
Speaking of which, yeah, here's at least a physically pretty good rendition of it from
Yeah.
Path of Titans.
You can even tell with its head, it's weird and like bulbous. It's Durophagous.
They get weird.
Yeah, and they last until the end of the Cretaceous. All of these groups do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, going back to Elasmosaurus, there's a little story here. If you're interested in paleontology, you've probably heard it before, but not everyone here will have. During the late 1800s, there were two very prominent paleontologists, Edward Drinker
them-
Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh.
Calling them paleontologists is stain upon paleontology, but we have to.
Yeah, they're very important to the history of the field. Um, they butted heads a few times when they were students. Uh, and I didn't know this until recently. Cope was like a decade older than
Yeah,
Marsh was like a decade older than
yeah.
Cope. So
Which
he was just bullying his junior, which,
he was bullying a child. No, yeah, he was bullying someone 10 years his junior.
yeah. Also, thank you, Jody Wolf. Thank you very much. Um, yeah, they butted heads. Uh, I listened to a I listened to a podcast recently about the Bone Wars and like their history. Apparently, pretty soon after he met Marsh, Cope suddenly burned a lot of his journals and personal letters.
Suddenly,
And yes, and I think it was after one particular bad argument. And some people have hypothesized it almost sounds like what someone would do after a breakup, which I'm not going to say if that's true or not, but there are kind of weird things with their history. Um, anyway,
a few weird things like I think it's Cope fucking bombing his own. Sorry, I do need to start with this. Bombing his own field site so that Marsh couldn't get the bones.
yeah, I'm not going to say which one of them was the better person.
No, neither. The answer is neither. Both of them are
Yes.
awful people. Mind you, one of them did win, but both are bad people.
Well, win in air quotes.
Yes.
Um, anyway, uh, early after starting work in the United States, Cope, Cope's teams brought back remains of this bizarre creature with way too many vertebrae compared to anything else that was yet known. Cope, understandably, looked
That's
at it,
Doc.
didn't recognize the bones as something his mentor had described,
Yep.
and instead of comparing it to the complete skeleton of Plesiosaurus they had,
Skeletons at that point.
um, interpreted it as a normal reptile. So put the head on the short end and the tail on the long end.
And because someone pointed out immediately that all of his vertebrae were backwards.
Uh,
He
but not just that, because someone publicly humiliated him
Oh
in
yes.
front of all of their colleagues.
That and said, "Hey, these vertebrae are backwards. Are you an idiot?" Instead of just saying, "Oh, I was mistaken. I'm sorry," he instead erected a new group of tetrapods that had backwards facing vertebrae
And then was proven wrong anyway.
immediately.
And thus the Bone Wars began,
Yeah.
or at least took off substantially. So uh, this thing is partially responsible for one of the biggest rivalries in paleontology history.
And
Unfortunately,
and responsible for most of the things most of the American dinosaurs names.
yeah, also true.
Famous
At
ones.
least a lot of the Jurassic and late Cretaceous ones.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Speaking
enough
for
about
Cretaceous.
plesiosaurs. A new challenger is approaching.
A turtle.
Well, not these; those come later. I forgot the slide order.
I think it's funnier if a new challenger is a turtle.
Wonder if they use block.
Yeah.
So sea turtles in general, just as a group, appear to have arisen during the late Jurassic, though our modern lineages, the ones that survive today, split off during the late Cretaceous. And they weren't alone. Other lines of turtles went in different directions, some of them becoming giants. One of the largest and definitely the most famous of these extinct ones is Archelon, a marine turtle that could reach 15 feet in length from beak to tail and possibly weighed up to 3 tons. And yet, despite their massive size and armored shell, these turtles were not immune to predation. And in fact, at least Archelon appears to have been a predator itself. It actually has a very sharp, hooked beak that seems to have been good at catching fish and other slippery prey, kind of like a lot of hawks today. But in regards to their predation, during the late Cretaceous, a new group of reptiles took over, and these would be the last rulers of the Mesozoic seas.
The true kings of the seas, probably the ones to earn that title fully.
But they're not Aquaman.
No, Aquaman rode one.
I was
though.
hoping Vandalia would get the reference. Never mind.
Ooh,
Uh,
Bubble Boy.
yeah, I don't do many DCs. I'm the other side.
It's an old WoW meme.
Oh,
I'm the king of the sea. Not never mind. So the terrors of the Cretaceous seas. So while ichthyosaurs and pliosaurs held the title of apex predators for most of the Mesozoic, about 90 million years ago, there was a sudden shift. And with their disappearance, the top predator niche was left open, and a certain group of lizards, actual lizards, took their place. Even though they were lizards, these were warm-blooded, fast, and they had powerful jaws and really high level. They had really surprising acceleration and agility. They are the mosasaurs. Now, they do first appear around 100 million years ago, but they start out small. Remember Dallosaurus from earlier. But they rapidly increase in body size. And before too long, their teeth marks start appearing on every other marine vertebrate of the late Cretaceous, including each other. Notably, though, not just vertebrates. Globidens here is a notable exception to the rule. Globidens means globular teeth because it has these weird, big, rounded teeth. And based on tooth marks on ammonites, clams, and turtle shells, it seems like it was a living nutcracker and specialized in hard-shelled prey. But it is the exception to this group, as most of them devoured anything they could get their jaws around. Much like the pliosaurs of the Jurassic and early Cretaceous, but faster. In fact, pictured here is a Tylosaurus, one of the larger ones, known especially well from the Western Interior Seaway in the central US, catching a Dolichoryncops from earlier, the short-necked plesiosaur. And we know they did this because we have a very large Tylosaur with an entire Dolichoryncops in its belly.
oh, okay. For a second, I thought it grabbed the pterosaur out of the sky.
Oh, they ate those too. They ate everything, and I do mean everything.
So then, was that I don't know if it was exaggerated in Jurassic World, or that big mosasaur ate the giant dinosaur? Was that more?
These things would have hunted dinosaurs if they had the opportunity. I'm not even going to say might have. They would. We just haven't found that
They
yet.
probably did. I could imagine these things would beach themselves for food. They're dumb
Yeah.
lizard.
Yeah, or like swim upstream and hunt. I don't know if we have any evidence of them
We have
eating
freshwater mosasaurs
non-bird
and
dinosaurs yet, but what was that?
We have freshwater. Oh yeah, we also have freshwater mosasaurs and freshwater plesiosaurs. We should have mentioned
Oh
that.
yeah, yep, we do. These things did get inland.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Oh, go ahead.
Because of the fact that these things don't are air breathing, there's basically nothing stopping them from going upriver, except for size constraints.
Mm-hmm. And remember how I said their bite marks appear on everything, including each other? Uh, so this is the skull of an adult Tylosaurus. All of these circles are tooth marks, some of which have teeth embedded in the bone. Um, and because because we can, measure the teeth and see what angles they make, we know how big the thing that bit it on the head is. And even though this thing is an adult, this one would have probably been at least a third larger. As for how big, Tylosaurus here could get to over 40 feet long, so bigger than a T-Rex, and
So
probably
were,
weighing almost as much.
so were these guys smaller or bigger than the ichthyosaur you mentioned earlier?
Smaller. Nothing gets as big as Ichthyotitan.
But they're still massive. These are school bus sized. And we might not have the biggest they can get, but they get big. And in fact, I think this is the one that has a tooth lodged in its brain case. But I could be wrong. So it might have been killed by this bite here. I know there's at least one we have that for. But there is one mosasaur that's more famous than Globidens or Tylosaurus. And that is the first extinct animal, Mosasaurus. Now, when I say first extinct mammal or first extinct animal, let me explain what I mean. Well, first of all the mosasaurs, there's one that stands above the others, both in size and importance to paleontology. Mosasaurus was first discovered in 1764, but it took until 1808 for its importance to be completely understood. Georges Cuvier, a naturalist, examined the skull and made two determinations. One, that it was a massive lizard, bigger than anything alive today besides whales. And two, that it came from an animal that had not been seen in recorded history. Because again, this thing is as big as a whale, but it's a giant lizard with giant sharp teeth. If it still lived, we would know. We would probably fear them. And this particular discovery was a major part of what inspired Cuvier to propose the idea of extinction. That discovery later informed Darwin's theory of evolution and the field of biology as a whole. As normal as it might sound now, the concept of extinction was really foreign at the time, generally because it was assumed that God would not allow any of his creatures that he created to disappear.
Unless it was a global flood.
Well, even then, it was assumed that he wouldn't allow anything to go extinct.
So I think the initial guess is that this was the mythical Leviathan.
I'm sure some people proposed that. I think when it was first discovered, it was just called the something monster. The area from
the Muse monster, because it's named after the river. Wasn't it
after
just
the
called...
River Muse? It was called something else, though.
Yeah.
Well,
Doc
but
looks
it was the monster.
Yeah, Mosasaurus is the most important creature in paleontology.
The great beast or monster of Maastricht.
Maastricht. Oh yes, and that's where the
because
name
it was found
Maastricht...
in Holland, right?
Yes, and I believe that's also where the Maastrichtian came from, because that was which is the last period of the
last period of the Cretaceous.
Thank you. I remember words.
And speaking of which, Mosasaurus itself is among the last and the largest Mosasaurs, which are the final group of Mesozoic marine reptiles. And that is the end.
Those are the sea monsters, for lack of a better word.
You didn't have it on the slideshow, but is there any? Do you have any? Is there like phylogenetic trees of these creatures
Tons.
related?
There are. I didn't include any in the slideshow because these things
things
come from
A bunch
all
of places.
branches of the reptile family tree.
Yeah,
I know there's any official where they branch off from pictures.
There are a bunch. The issue is that with all of them, it's either we don't know, or in the case of like, let's use mosasaurs and metriorhynchids, for example, those are on two opposite sides of the reptilian tree. So a tree,
But they look almost identical, at least
Yeah.
at a glance.
so putting all of them in a tree, you'd have to also put birds and dinosaurs and pterosaurs, and yeah.
Because, like I said, I mentioned earlier, I know mosasaurs are strictly within the lizard branch, but I don't know the other ones.
The other ones we don't really know. With Sauropterygians and Ichthyosaurs, we don't know.
Yeah.
Because
Mosasaurs are lepidosaurs, which are lizards. I'll just go back through. Turtles are turtles. Those are easier. Plesiosaurs and their relatives.
Sauropterygians, which we don't know where they come from, where they started, are, we know they probably they come from somewhere during the Triassic. The issue is that unlike other places where it's just we don't have enough fossils, the Triassic is so weird with its fossils that even if we get the thing we're looking for, we have no idea if it's real because everything else looks dumb and stupid.
So we don't know if plesiosaurs are true reptiles or branch off before true reptiles.
They're definitely true reptiles. They're definitely true reptiles.
They're true reptiles. Right now, the debate seems to be between: are these archosauromorphs?
Yeah.
Or are they an early branch of the other trees?
Yes, which we can't really tell because everything in the Triassic, early Triassic, on land looks the exact same. It looks like some weird crocodile.
Yep, and a reminder that as you go back in time, different species start to appear more and more similar.
Yeah.
Because they're diverging from a common ancestor, so you're getting closer to the divergence.
Yeah.
The Triassic is when everything splits apart, and most of it within the first 10 million years.
So everything looks like a crocodile, everything looks like a lizard, everything looks like a dinosaur, everything looks like a nothosaur. So it's kind of a guessing game, kind of a, hey, this, actually a great quote from a thing I learned today. Everything kind of mismatches depending on where you show the femur in the light. So,
and I do want to say, it's not entirely so much a guessing game, more so that we're so close to the origins of these groups that most of them haven't developed the characteristics that we use to identify later members.
Actually, a perfect example is Attenborosaurus. Attenborosaurus doesn't have the stuff that a plesiosaur would have. But the issue is that it and its relatives that are pliosaurs look so much like just a basal plesiosaur that they are probably the same thing. Also, yes, Caden, that is true. If Sauropterygians are those, they probably are relatives of turtles.
But the problem there is we're not 100% where turtles go.
Yeah,
we
turtles
think
are
there
dumb.
might be archosaurs, but they're so close to the bottom, we're not sure.
The issue with turtles is that turtles turn their skeleton into a shell, so they annihilate a lot of the diagnostic features.
Yeah.
It reminds me. If I have any questions, speak now. Forever hold your peace. At least in the
Yes,
That's true.
until the comments.
I have Any questions about these sea monsters?
Sea monsters, other extinct critters. We did go over a bit of the Great Dying earlier. It's an event not everyone knows about, but is very important to the
The
history of
world,
life on Earth.
Oh,
the world got set on fire.
I do have a question. I do have a question. Uh, I know this series is mostly focused on the Mesozoic, but was there any great sea creatures in the Permian and Carboniferous?
So Permian is questionable. Permian, we don't have a lot of sea deposits or ocean deposits. There are things that we have, like there's some semi-aquatic synapsids, and there's things like helicoprion.
Which is
Uh,
a weird shark over here.
yeah,
Well, shark relative
Because at
thing.
least as far as I know, the only big sea monster before all this was the
with
di- di- yeah.
Dunkleosteus isn't really a sea monster anymore. It's kind of a tuna with a cleaver for a head.
So they shrunk it. It's no longer the big dude.
Shrunk the dunk, yeah.
Yeah.
It appears to be based on a very accurate measurement, so much so that no one's even published a rebuttal paper for it. They've kind of just accepted it. From what am I wrong? I haven't seen like a
From
lot
what
of
I've
rebuttals.
heard, or at least I haven't seen any rebuttals yet.
But
Yeah.
that was
I
still
will
a bit. But that was still a big predator, even
It's
though
like
it
a
was soft
tuna.
milk.
Is it big as a tuna?
Oh.
So, mind you,
Um,
tunas are big, but if you've ever seen a real life tuna,
Yeah.
but they're like
Or I was just gonna say, there were large semi to mostly aquatic amphibians in the Permian,
yeah.
but not
I
a
think
ton of them appear to have gone out to sea. At least not many that we have records of.
the seas of the Permian are very mysterious. We don't know a lot about them due to the fact that of Pangea, since Pangea was one giant continent, a lot of the stuff is not underwater. So all the deposits would be underwater currently. So
It probably doesn't help that at least many marine deposits are carbonates, and the oceans turned to acid for a million years.
that's also true. They might have literally dissolved most
fossils.
at least
I,
from the most
I
recent Permian.
I was
at
just
least
wondering
within the
because
last few million years.
but as I was wondering because between these guys, between them and the ichthyosaurs, I don't know of any major.
There aren't that we know of.
Not that we know of.
There's nothing. Like the helicoprion deposit is probably the best deposit we have for marine Permian creatures.
Mm-hmm.
At least I know of.
And helicoprion, however you want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
It is a fish.
Yeah.
So fish were probably holding the oceans pretty well before the Great Dying.
That's what I would assume.
So there might not have been much opportunity for vertebrates to return to the ocean.
Yes.
Or
Now,
other
mind you,
vertebrates to return.
there could be we don't know. There could be semi-aquatic therapsids. We know there were ones in lakes and streams and rivers. There might have been some that gone out to the ocean. But if they did it in like the past 10 million years, in the last 10 million years of the Permian, as Doc said, they probably were literally like melted.
Okay, I gotta bring this up since we're talking about them. But how did the Loch Ness thing start?
The Loch Ness
Ness
monster, that's a stick. It started because probably someone saw King Kong. Because there's a great video. I don't know what it is, but basically it explains that King Kong came out about like a few months before the Loch Ness monster really exploded. Now, of course, there's been sea monsters before, but the other thing is that Loch Ness is connected to the sea, so it's probably just a whale penis, like most sea monsters are just whale penises. Um,
A surprising number are.
yeah. So it is probably just a whale that got stuck. The predictions are maybe an elephant, because an elephant also escaped from the circus around that same time, as like the gray blobs were seen
Mhm.
like running around. So it probably was the elephant escaped. People saw that at night, didn't help. Elephants can also swim, and they do it with their trunks up to breathe.
Mhm. Probably also
So
important, or probably also worth mentioning. The earliest reports of the Loch Ness monster weren't a plesiosaur. Some of them
yeah,
were gray blobs. Some sounded like a camel.
yeah. Some were just a bunch of humps in the water,
Hmm. Which
which
could be a wave with weird
e-
shadows.
or an eel or a log. There are eels in Loch Ness. There are freshwater eels that live in Loch Ness.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
So very high is the probability that this guy lasted for 65 million past the Cretaceous.
no,
Yes, definitely.
guaranteed didn't happen. We don't have fossils of it,
He,
and
he's joking now.
I'm aware.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, for anyone in this chat. Well, Doc probably says fossil records incomplete. To an extent, if you don't find something for like 50 million years, it doesn't exist. And even with coelacanths have the excuse of being deep water fish. So,
mhm. And not only that, coelacanths were known to the local people. They were a surprise to scientists.
yes, yeah, people knew what they were. The people fishing there were like, "Yeah, I catch this fish. It's not good," and we throw it back out. But yeah,
Yeah.
And those guys are uh, Sauripians like us.
but
What was that?
Those guys are Sarcryptinians like us.
Um.
Lobe fins.
Oh,
uh,
Sarcopterygian.
Yes.
Sarcopterygian
Yes.
is not lobe fin, isn't? Or am I
No,
thinking
it
of
is.
Oh, I'm thinking of Sarcopterygian, not Sauropterygian. I hate
Yeah.
Latin. Sorry.
I hate
Yes.
pronouncing things.
Yeah. Latin's annoying sometimes.
Hmm.
Oh well. Do we? Oh, I haven't seen
All right.
any
Uh,
other questions.
all
So.
right. Did we reach our super chat goal?
Well, I set it for $5 super
You
chats. We
got
got
20.
121, so we are one down. So the chat does not get to decide what we talk about next time, unless someone sends a $5 super chat right now.
Yes. But
But
it
then
is
we'd have to wait around for a poll, and yeah. So did not reach the goal, but it is okay.
yes. As that time
Better luck next time, people.
yes. Thank you guys for having me. This was very fun. Oh, I forgot to mention. I've worked on plesiosaurs before. I've prepped them out. That's as much as I
Mhm.
can say about it. But yeah, they're
Okay,
cool.
before you go, do you have guys anything you want to advertise?
Uh Go subscribe to Doc or the rotting corpse of our collective channel. Um
Yeah.
so the very fun thing about being all paleontologists in training and having second jobs in the case of me and Doc is that you have no free time, and especially when one of your co-hosts um lives in the England, uh you can't record anything. Ooh,
Yeah.
favorite depiction of a marine reptile.
Hmm.
That's hard.
Yeah, that's really tough.
It's really hard to beat the Liopleurodon from Walking With. Like that's what my brain went to automatically, and it's really hard to beat that.
I get that, but the Ophthalmosaurus and especially the puppets they have for them are so good.
Yeah, I would say that Prehistoric Planet, well, good. None of those are my canon things anymore.
Mm.
That's what I go based off of. Which one's my canon? Like my canon Tylosaurus is from Sea Monsters 3D. for example. You know what the answer is? Symbol spondylus from Sea Monsters. That's what the correct answer is.
That one's good. I have a weird one because it's not from like a movie or documentary. It's from a game, actually.
Which one?
So I play a dinosaur and other extinct animal game called Beasts of Bermuda.
Ah.
And it's a game where you're a bunch of dinosaurs living on islands or a snake. Or you live in the ocean and
are
you
a
either
snake.
hunt things in the ocean or you specialize to hunt things on land that swim or that get
Beat
isolated
yourself.
in water. What was that?
Beat yourself.
You can do that and you can make yourself better at doing that. But in Beasts of Bermuda, the sea level changes and sometimes it changes very dramatically. So much so that most of a landmass can get covered in water, which lets the marine reptiles swim in and go after land prey. And if you are playing a mosasaurus in this game, which you can grab things and drag them into the ocean. Yeah, it's really fun to do. It's a really fun depiction of the creature, honestly.
Yeah, but Beast of Bermuda is pretty good.
So,
I like
so Doc, how is your other series coming along? Your geology series, or whatever it's.
Yes. I'm gonna hold off on working on the next episode for another couple days. I've been really busy. I've been stuck inside for a few days. I want to go outside for a bit.
Yeah.
But
Up here in
after
Ohio-
that, I do want to get back to it and my other stuff.
Yeah, in Ohio, it's either been raining or freezing the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. As for me, next Sunday, I will be a guest on Bad Science Sunday with Maya, and I may or may not be doing a reaction video to something I'll be watching next weekend, WrestleMania weekend.
Nice.
And then, but then in 2 weeks, if we have a thing up, if he's not busy or not, Doc may be back or not. I don't know yet. We'll find out in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we will see.
Right. Okay.
Hope everyone has a good night.
Okay.
Until then.
All right. Never stop learning and enjoy
See
the
ya.
randomness. See you next time. Bye. Hey, thanks for watching my podcast or Let's Play. If you want to help support my channel, you can make a monthly or yearly pledge on Patreon, or just a one-time donation on Vimeo, PayPal, or Cash App. For those looking for something to wear, we have some shirts, hats, and other stylish things in our merch store. If you enjoy gaming, you can always follow and sub to me on Twitch. For those who don't want to give money, I have an Amazon and Steam wish list would help the channel out. And of course, just liking, leaving a comment, and sharing this video helps more than you can imagine. And always remember to never stop learning and enjoy the randomness.